Today, H.R. 1 is officially dead, and Kamala Harris is finally headed to the border. We've got a lot coming up today, and it starts right now. Welcome to the news and why it matters. I'm Sarah Gonzalez, today joined by BlazeTV host Elijah Schaefer. He hosts slightly offensive.
Can we just get a nice little cheers to begin the show out for a second?
Oh, okay.
A little hoorah for a happy day.
And I might just add, when does the episode of you
Our
and
episode?
Yeah, Friday?
It comes out this Friday at 2 p.m. Central on Slightly Offensive. And let's just say this, LA Public Health is telling kids to do something with carrots, and it's not eating them. Find out as we teach Sarah about far left sexual propaganda for kids. It is, trust me, 2 o'clock or on BlazeTV. You have to watch it.
Yeah, I was not prepared for this at all. I'll just say that.
Uncomfortable laughs. Like.
Yeah, I suddenly turned into Kamala. Also joined by BlazeTV contributor Eric July. Thanks for being here as well, Eric. And also, you should be very glad that you missed out on what happened yesterday with Elijah. I'd just like to say.
Did you see a picture?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm completely
Definitely
out of the loop.
Don't go to Twitter and find it.
I'm suspended right now on Twitter. That's why I haven't been saying anything for the last 2 days. Yeah.
Why?
Called someone a term that I won't repeat on the show. It wasn't that bad, but it was a term that I'm just not gonna repeat.
Yeah.
A BA. Let's say that. And they didn't. They banned me for that. It was just dumb and stupid stuff. I'm appeling it, but they haven't said anything yet. So.
Well, apparently black people can loot stores and burn down cities, and that's okay. But use a bad word. No, sir.
Yeah. No. All right, let's get into the headlines. So H.R. 1 is now dead. Senate Republicans blocked this legislation. Now, I loved on Twitter, Eric, you may not have seen it because you're banned.
Yes.
But I loved how on Twitter, on the little moments column where it shows the news, and it says, of course, Senate Republicans block voting rights bill. I just love the way that they're constantly framing this as a voting rights bill. It obviously affected election campaign finance reforms that Democrats, of course, say if you don't pass this, you are effectively initiating Jim Crow 2.0. This was the For the People Act, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the legislation. It called for voter ID laws. I mean, it basically federalized election just completely. And here, I want to play first, before I get into, gentlemen, your thoughts on this. I want to play Kamala Harris, who was very upset when this didn't pass, although I don't think that they really expected anything differently. This was not an unexpected turn of events. But Kamala Harris, in the most incredible word salad ever, and also, by the way, I will give her props for taking a whole, almost 50 seconds and not cackling unnecessarily. Here's Kamala Harris on the defeat of H.R. 1.
This is about the American people's right to vote, unfettered. It is about their access to the right to vote in a meaningful way. Because nobody is debating, I don't believe, whether all Americans have the right to vote. The issue here is there actual access to the voting process, or is that being impeded? And the bottom line is that the President and I are very clear. We support S1. We support the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and the fight is not over.
But this isn't about voting rights, okay? This is about voting rights in a meaningful way.
Centralizing power.
Make it make sense, right? So actually, it was about not requiring voter IDs, and no states would be allowed to require that you show an ID to vote. It was going to make taxpayers pay for campaigns for congressional candidates. I mean, it was just, there was nothing that was good about it. And I think that it was all, a lot of it was the Democrats seeing an opportunity because there was a pandemic, and they saw an opportunity to go, oh, we got all of these different things, for the pandemic. We got new mail-in rules. We got all of these things. How do we make this just permanent across the board, and they took they shot their shot. They shot their shot, Elijah.
Yeah, I was going to say the most alarming part about this was that they were going to try to make ballot harvesting legal in every state. And what's crazy about this, if people don't know what ballot harvesting is, it's essentially the ability to get ballots to people who did not request them, get them to them after the date in terms of saying, oh, well, they couldn't get their ballots turned in, aka overturning elections after they've already happened, which we saw happen in California, specifically in Orange County. There were many people who even celebrated victories, including young Kim, and then they ballot harvested and they got Cisneros put in instead. So this is actually flipping elections illegally through force perjuring and gathering of ballots. Now what's crazy is they call it We the People Act. So you would think it's like, okay, well everybody wants ballot harvesting because California's doing it. What other states don't want California politics? Well, it turns out only 11% of Americans, according to the Honest Election Project, want ballot harvesting to be legal in their state or in all states. So this We the People Act really only represented about 10%, a small minority, which shows you once again this was the federal government trying to centralize power over elections to subvert the will of the people so that they themselves could control outcomes and they could bring the status quo of the elite ruling class as the governance rather than represent the people as the republic they were designed to be. This should alarm Americans. This should scare Americans because, by the way, it barely didn't pass. It's not like it barely didn't pass. The government almost took power away from the voters and then said, that's what you wanted, right? For the elites to rule you?
Yeah, so basically, Joe Manchin is once again in the position of saving the entire republic, which does not make me feel good. That does not make me feel good, Eric.
Yeah, you mentioned it last year. There was a lot of opportunities that they saw with the election. I don't want to say anything that'll get the channel in trouble.
We should just preface that we do know that Joe Biden is the most popular president in American history.
Absolutely.
He did win with 80 million votes.
For sure. And of course I wouldn't. I don't want to say anything that's to the contrary of
let the party hear you.
Yeah. But there are some things that benefit particular parties when it comes to this recent election cycle. Now, they want those to remain in place. And they almost got away with it. But as with everything, it's about rhetoric. So they have it, We the People Act. Who's going to be against that? So if you are against that, you're a racist that doesn't want black people to vote or something insane like that. In the event that you just come out against, which is what this is, more of a centralization of certain powers. They don't care about that. They've been dishonest. I mean, we see what they do with January 6th and everything in that regard. This is what they have absolutely mastered. And that is, okay, this is about us maintaining power, about us keeping it in power. In any event that, let's say, either be it other politicians, commentators that are against this, well, they are attacking you. So, bill doesn't pass, albeit barely. They come out, the Kamala Harris's of the world, say, hey, guys, look at this. They attacked you. They attacked your right to vote, if you believe that's a thing. They attacked you because they didn't give us all of this power. This is par for the course. They do this with virtually certainly everything. And you're right, Elijah, in that Americans should be alarmed with that centralization of power, because do you really think that? And it's funny, obviously, the Republicans, they failed in this regards in trying to convince the unfortunate, well, how can you when you have the media on the other guy's side, trying to convince them that they are the ones that are trying to protect the election, which they would make the argument like we want legal votes and we want to make sure people have ID so we know that everything is legitimate. And it seems like Democrats are fighting completely against that. And again, they're going to get away with it. And I think this conversation is far from done, despite this not failing. It's
not over. It's like the critical race theory thing, like you were saying, where they go, oh, if you're against the 1619 Project, which essentially is teaching people to hate their country and to be racist, you're actually fighting anti-racist education. If you fight this illegal centralization of power away from the republic, you're blocking a voting rights bill. And so everything is about narrative. It's all about optics. And by the way, remember, optics are very important, and the Democrats know that wholeheartedly, and that's why they do this. And it's like, and now they go, hey, remember, don't vote a Republican. Last year, remember when they blocked the voting bill? Well, that's not who you want
It's
in
in
office.
all of their slogans, even with their social movements. It's like with Black Lives Matter. Who's against that? How could you possibly be against that? You'd have to be a racist, right, to be in opposition to this movement that is stealing everything out of stores, setting places on fire, and all of that sort of thing. But it has the rhetoric in the title. We've seen that even with, remember Rand Paul got in trouble with this for being in opposition. I believe Massey as well, if I'm not mistaken, to this anti-lynching law.
Right.
Obviously,
Yeah.
Obviously, lynching has been illegal at the federal level forever, and that was the case that he was making. I believe even Amash, who's no longer a congressman, was making that same point. It's like, no, that's not what it is. But of course, you are in opposition to it, therefore you must be pro-lynching.
Right.
They're very, very good
Infrastructure.
at that.
Are you against
Don't even get me
infrastructure?
started. Okay, well, you mentioned optics, Elijah, and how it's all about optics. Let's watch Katy. I'm sorry for your eyeballs. Okay, Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom, they made this PSA that was in support of this of HR 1, and I'm sure they're very, very upset that it didn't pass. But here is just a little bit of their optics, what they are trying to portray to the American people to be true if HR 1 doesn't pass. Watch.
Let's hope this works.
We've got to tell him.
Fundamental purpose of our democracy is the freedom of our elections. You are our only hope. The America you know doesn't exist in our future. Democracy is dead. We have no voice. The regime watches our every move.
It started when voter suppression ran wild all over
Imagine
America.
saying that
The voting rights bills died in the Senate. Polling places closed. We lost our right to vote.
This future doesn't have to be. You have the power to change it. Save democracy while you can.
Call your senator now.
Tell Daisy we love her.
It's the cringiest piece of. Sorry, oops, it's not my show. I was gonna say that was a bad. What the hell was? Can I even just say what the hell? What the hell was that? I mean, first of all, the makeup, the production quality, everything was there, but the message was just. It made me want to off myself. It was stupid.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're not a fan of democracy, Elijah? That was that keyword that they keep throwing in there, democracy.
And I would say yes, I am not a fan of.
Neither am I. I don't like democracy.
I don't like it.
That's not what this country was founded upon, actually, you guys.
That's
you
why
keep
we
throwing
should
that word around.
That's why we should just reject the premise. Anytime they bring that up, just reject the premise. It's like I'm not against.
They said democracy is dead.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Great.
That's threaten me with a good time. I don't want to be ruled over by California.
Threaten me with a good time. They're like, do you want democracy to die? You're like, don't tempt me with a good time.
Not at all. Not at all. But
that
look,
sounds like a
it's
wild
funny.
Friday night.
You've seen a lot more of this sort of ramp up with this connection between the entertainment elites and more so the authoritarian left in the Democratic Party. This is something that I talk about a lot.
Yeah.
And I want people to be mindful of that and pay attention to if you wonder why they are so connected, where it seems like no matter what it is, be it bills, even with like the whole mask stuff and the vaccine, anything that the authoritarian left told them to say or told them to do, they would repeat basically everything. They come up with promotional items, and in some cases, definitely when it comes to the ad council, your taxpayer dollars get paid to lay STEM up so they can do ads, which are effectively just propaganda. I mean, if we can be completely honest, by literal textbook definition. So, the entertainment elites gonna do what the entertainment elites do.
It's just incredible. Our vote, we got our voting rights taken away. Like, that's not what this says at all, in the slightest. I still heard, again, Eric, you wouldn't know because you were banned from Twitter, but I still heard these people on Twitter are still coming at me, telling me that the bill in Georgia that passed, the election reform bill, makes it illegal for people to be given water in the line. And I'm like, you're still parroting this talking point. Yeah. They're still parroting the talking point. It is verifiably false, and yet you have these yahoos who, by the way, can vote and are voting. And this is what they think because they heard it from Brian Stelter.
But this is where I think the left cops out in their claim for democracy. So they try to point out that, oh, well, black people couldn't vote, so the original voting laws were racist, and they get you focused on this racism thing. The reality is that the founding fathers set up an important precedent that voting should not be taken lightly. We are a republic. And a lot of people, unfortunately, should not vote. And this is why the left pushes for more voters, not just for felons, for 16-year-olds, but if you notice, whether it's their dumb artwork on Spotify or social media, it's like, your duty is to vote. No,
HR 1 was included automatic voter registration, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Your duty is not to vote.
Yeah.
That is not your duty of this country. Maybe in Australia, where they have mandatory voting, but that's the Commonwealth. We don't serve the crown, we serve God, and we serve freedom and liberty. So that's what we serve here. And quite frankly, when you look at this, that push is because they know that the way the country was meant, the voters that they were meant to entrap, and I'm not talking about just white people, but specifically, let's talk about landowners.
Yeah, property owners.
Let's talk about people, when they say men, you're also talking about in that time people who had education, right? This is very important to understand. They could understand, think, debate. And if you ever looked at the way that they ran Congress, that was violent. It was intense. Yeah. They did not sit around tweeting. They hit each other with canes. They shot each other. I mean, so now we have John McCain. Back then we just had the cane. So when you look at this and you look at where we've come to, we've devolved from a standardized republic that was held voting as sacred to now where it's become your right. Yeah. This is your right to vote.
I've always hated that term.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that's what I'm saying is that, you know what? If you're dumb, if you don't know anything, if you are like these people, Hollywood, you have no precedent in politics. You don't know anything. Yeah. In fact, you're okay at acting. Lord of the Rings was good, Orlando Bloom. I like that. Fireworks was a good song, Katy Perry, I think. Maybe I've heard that was a good one. But ultimately speaking, everyone thinks now today that they are a politician, that they're a commentator because they can vote. And to me, this is what's bringing the destruction of the country.
Yeah, amen. All right, we've got a lot more to come. First, we want to thank our sponsor. Oh boy, this would be a fun one with these guys. Kitty Poo Club. I don't think Elijah is a cat person is a thing, which honestly would be his bad.
I had one. I picked it up and it crawled into my air conditioning unit in my car, and I had to pay $1,000 to get my engine removed and pull the cat out of the duct, and I raised it.
Really?
That's a real thing.
Okay, I thought you just struck me as a person who would be anti-cat.
But I found one, and that's how everyone ends up with cats.
Yeah, well, sort of, yes. But if you're like me and you're a cat person, you know cats are awesome and we love them, but it's not fun changing the litter box, cleaning out the litter box. You gotta go every once in a while and dump the whole thing out and clean out the box and no, you don't have to do that anymore. All right, Kitty Poo Club is a convenient all-in-one monthly litter box solution. They're actually going to deliver you a recyclable litter box that is pre-filled with the litter of your choice. It is leak-proof, and whenever the month's up, you just recycle the box and they're gonna ship you a new one. So you don't have to go out to your backyard and hose off the litter box with your hose. That's so 2019, okay? Get with the program, get Kitty Poo Club. They have a no-risk satisfaction guarantee. You can easily customize or cancel anytime. Right now, they are offering you 40% off of your first order. Wow. That's gonna include a free dome. Now Elijah wants another cat again.
That was the worst part, was the litter.
I know.
And now I'm looking at this, and why wasn't that invented when I had a cat?
I know, that's what I'm saying. Plus, you get a free dome, a free scoop, and free shipping when you sign up for AutoShip. All you have to do is go to kittypooclub.com, promo code Y. I know it sounds silly, but it is going to be a lifesaver for those of you who have cats. Go to kittypooclub.com, promo code Y. Vice President Kamala Harris is finally visiting the United States-Mexico border this week. Now, this is only 91 days after all of this border crisis was announced. So better late than never, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it's because the media, I won't say that the media is actually doing their job because I think that would be giving them too much credit. But they are actually asking some sort of questions on the border. We saw her, what was it, week before last, just constantly fumbling, answering these questions. Very basic questions. Why haven't you visited the border? You are not just the vice president. You are the border czar.
Yeah, she also never went to Europe.
Oh, that's a great point. That's
yeah,
a great
she
point.
never went to Europe. I love that. It's like, are you hungry? Well, I'm also like 28 years old. She just completely deflects it. And it's like, I didn't ask you anything about that. It's like, and the way that she deflects when she's asked questions that she doesn't expect shows you that she's on a script, which means she's an actor, which makes you question how she got where she got. Anyway, I'm just saying she's not a border czar, and that's what the intention is, putting people in charge that aren't actually in charge to confuse the general public so that we don't understand what's happening, so that there's chaos, so that the people behind the scenes can execute the madness that they're executing.
Well, I will also say that, former President Donald Trump announced that he was going to the border, and she now is beating him to the border by 1 day. So now she can say, I went to the border before Donald Trump, even though he had his plans way beforehand, and even just as, early as last week, they were asking her. And
she go at the
was
same
like,
time. Let's see a PR thing. He should change it and go the same day as her and see where the news cameras are.
Totally should. You know that they'd be with him. He totally should. But I mean, so Elijah, you bring up an interesting point. Eric, do you think that is the media going to give her a pass on this one? Let her proceed with obviously these optics that she's trying to portray?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But this isn't anything that's necessarily unique to Kamala. I mean, obviously, with her being in a position of being a vice president, it makes it a little different. But all of those coastal elites that live in these areas and have so much to say about what's going on at the border, even prior to this recent crisis in the past year, they don't know. They're completely unfamiliar with that. And again, even people that are, I've lived in South Texas. I've said this many times on the show. And if really, unless you see it, and obviously you interact, especially with the locals around those areas, whether it be in the Laredos of the world, and you actually talk with these people and you see some really messed up stuff yourself, it opens your eyes. And it's not just as black or white of an issue as some people have liked to think that it was. So it doesn't surprise me. Now, yeah, could it be scary that you got people that are, unfortunately, they have some influence, let's say, on the policy there, having been completely disconnected to what's going on. And obviously, if there is something that hits the fan, they're not the ones that are going to get impacted by it. This is why they have the most to say, because they're completely unfamiliar with it. I think that just represents really government in its entirety, but especially people. I know, yes, California does, of course, they have their own deal going on, but especially at the Texas-Mexico border, it is a special thing that you just have to be there in order to see, in order to know what's really going on. And I really think a lot of these folks that live up north, especially up north, not saying that's where Kamala is. I know she's out of California, if I'm not mistaken, but especially up in the Northeast, they have absolutely no idea, but they have the most to say about the situation.
Well, Kamala would disagree with you. And she said, well, I mean, that would just be a grand gesture. And that's not going to look, the root of the problem, guys, is climate change.
That's true.
Well, she would say, I may not have gone to the border because I'm always on the fence. She literally is never taking a hard position on anything. And also, I think that we have to understand this is not necessarily bad, actually, the border crisis, because one thing that this did that is unique is that it has emboldened Greg Abbott, our governor, who I have never been a fan of, but most certainly I think that he's been waking up to the sensitivity of the way that the right has been becoming more hardlined, and he's starting to realize the base, if he does not appeal to the base and continues to act like a ruling governor rather than one who's a representative, that he'll be voted out. And so with him taking the border crisis into his own hand, allocating the $1 billion towards building a border wall, getting the contractors, starting construction, pulling state troopers from Arkansas, getting funding from Ron DeSantis. Now, I'm not saying that I'm happy with his overall performance, but a lot of people who were fence sitters are realizing the republic has been lost. We have a failed regime running the country with an intentional destruction of the United States. There are two empires. And so state rights are becoming more important, where people in Texas are saying, we cannot trust the federal government, Abbott. We cannot. With all due respect, sir, we can't hold against you your mask mandate, which I'll never forget, and we cannot hold against you the shutdowns. Right now, we need a leader who can act, because we are being invaded at the southern border. McAllen, Texas, it's it's literally like looking at Syria during the
their
2011
local leadership from Democrat to Republican because of this.
In Fort Worth, some of the same thing happened as well, because people are going, look, all I know is I need answers and I need things to change now. And if Texas, through all this, gets emboldened, becomes more independent, and we start building our own borders, I hope other states soon follow.
I mean, I will just say it did only take Greg Abbott, a 600% increase in illegal border crossings for him to finally go, hey, you know what, guys? You know what we should do? Maybe we should start arresting people who cross the border. So
at least he started, though. I mean, like, the thing is, we're at the point where our leaders are such dog
Prather2022.com, by the way.
That it's like, as of right now, I know people need to be voted out, but it's time that we start putting the pressure on these politicians. And no, not by raiding the Capitol. It's by telling them, like, look, you have an ultimatum here. You either get tough on this and you start representing like a red state, you start being a Republican, you start pushing back, you start crushing down on this, and you start fighting back against the federal government and being independent, or you're going to be out of here and we're going to find a populist leader who will. Believe me, we will.
Mm-hmm. Eric?
Well, I mean, if we talk decentralization, that's my now. Why does it have to be a border crisis to get people to start thinking outside of the box of the federal government? I don't know, but if it's something that's going to, lead people in to start having a serious conversation about secession, which I've been trying to have this conversation for about as long as I've been on the show, and people laughed it off. Now people are starting to take it just a little more serious. Hey, maybe Texas should become maybe closer like its own country, because these feds are the ones that are really taking it to us. So look at it at that issue, but look at it at everything else. Why on earth do we have quacks in Washington deciding what the hell is going on in Texas?
Yeah.
It's a good point.
It is. All right. We got to take a break. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Built Bar. So if you are looking for a protein bar that is healthy, but you're like, I don't want to eat a protein bar because it mostly tastes like I'm eating cardboard or I'm chewing on chalk. And as it turns out, I don't actually like to ingest chalk. Well, you don't have to do that with Built Bar, because they are protein bars, so they're going to be high in protein, high in fiber, low in calories and carbs, but they taste delicious, so you feel like you're eating a candy bar. The coconut one tastes, I always feel like I'm eating a Mounds bar when I'm eating the coconut one. They've got a chocolate orange one that is amazing for those of you who used to get those chocolate oranges, remember, that came in the orange wrapping and they had the little dots on them so it looked like a chocolate orange. I'm telling you guys, you can trick yourself. You're like, I'm eating a candy bar. I'm not eating something that's healthy and good for me, but it's not going to expand your waistline because it is actually good for you. All right. If you have not yet gotten on the Built Bar bandwagon, you got to go there now. Okay. The new URL, they've got a new one. It's very easy to remember. It is just built.com. Okay. BUILT.com. Use promo code News15. You will save 10% right now off of your first order if you use promo code News15 only at built.com. Leaked documents today from Iowa school system show that Iowa teachers are being forced to classify the Make America Great Again movement as a type of racism and white supremacy. This is in, again, this leaked document that I believe Benny Johnson actually received from someone within the Iowa school system. But as you can see, if those of you who are watching and not just listening, it has examples of racism across levels. There is a covert white supremacy and overt white supremacy. And one of the ones that is right edging up on that line to overt white supremacy is Make America Great Again. By the way, that is just above Confederate flags. And if you keep going down, there is also denial of white privilege and my favorite, denial of racism. So denial of racism is just covert white supremacy. You can't win because you have to acknowledge, obviously, that you are, in fact, racist. You can't deny that you're racist because that actually in itself makes you racist. You can't freaking win. I think of my friend Eric July, who says the game is rigged.
Always was from the start. It always was. How many more examples do we have to see of this for people to start really taking this public school thing serious? And I'm not talking about going to your school board, screaming at them and getting arrested and thrown out of that bad boy. I'm talking about ending them to its entirety. We have way too many examples of this. It's corrupt and it's going to continue to go the opposite direction of being fixed. We know how much power the teachers unions across the country have when it comes to public education. The only solution, and I know there's people that I've seen you guys in the chats, on the comments, well, he's being unrealistic. Am I? Look how much has changed in this country in the last, I don't know, couple of years, even just at the beginning of the COVID situation. How much of the policies have the left been able to, let's say, put a spotlight on, and then those turn into legitimate policies that impact your own personal life within that short period of time? My first time having a slip up on this show, I got freaking drag queens on Blue's Clues. Something that I don't think even 3 years ago, someone would have told me that was coming, I'd be like, you a fool. We'd never get to that point. Yet here we are. That's how they operate. You have to strip the power away from them. And when people say, when you want to end, let's say, public education in this country or something like that, what do you replace it with? And to that question I ask, when you replace a cancer, what do you replace it with? Education and how we approach it in this country is not only outdated, it's completely nonsensical when you consider how much access to information the regular individual, poor to rich, has right now. Yet we still go through these K through 12 monopolized curriculums where, again, they're pumping propaganda and effectively. I know there's a lot of teachers that watch this show. You are a part of the propaganda wing of the state, or the indoctrination wing, excuse me, to be more correctly, of the state. And that's the reality. This is not something that is going to get resolved by way of trying to lecture school board members. You have to strip the power away from them. And to the top of the list, I know I saw, like, for example, Denver, we got the border. We got all these things we care about. To the top of your list, to me, as far as public education, it should be getting rid of, not reforming it. It cannot be reformed. It's get these quacks who are teaching this nonsense to your kids and get them out of a job and forced out on the streets and forced to get a real job. And any teacher that is actually worth the crap, even if administration is worth the crap, you should have no problem finding a job worth a damn on the other side of this, when there's actually a legitimate competitive market. Well, we have even the private schools right now. Those aren't private schools per se, because even a lot of them are largely based on the public school curriculum. I'm talking about ending them and having a completely decentralized, privatized market when it comes to education, because this is just going to continue to get worse.
Yeah, also covert white supremacy. I mean, this is the madness, too, where they're just trying to take down what they see as being a power structure. And unfortunately for them, you know, this focus on race and racism, I mean, before 1965, this country was a white country. Whether you think that's racist or not, there was black people. And I've always said that, you know, figuring out race relations between black and white people would have always been a necessity, because last time I checked, the black people didn't get here because they bought, you know, express tickets on first class. This is something that white European people created a country, and then they imported black people from Africa who were, you know, they're not the ones who enslaved them. They were enslaved by their own people, and they were imported. And that obviously created racial divisions in the country, and things needed to be rectified. Now, if you were trying to rectify relations between white people and black people, two things you could have done differently. Number one, stopped executing all of them before they were born. That was a good start, aka banning abortion. So that didn't make sense if you were trying to rectify race relations by keeping abortion to population control black people. But you also wouldn't flood the country with a bunch of other nationalities and cultures without pushing assimilation. So the 1965, you know, change of immigration was absolutely a setup. It was meant to undermine the country. It actually is what caused the problem. It's impossible for black and white people to create any type of cohesion or this ending of white supremacy or whatever they're saying, because there's just too many voices in the conversation now. It's like, well, then how do you rectify Hispanic-black relations and Asian-black relations and white-Hispanic? And it gets very confusing in this multicultural experiment, which was never meant to work. And it doesn't work, and it can't work. This is why empires fall. They get too complicated. They lose their biospirit. They either lose their common religion, which we have done. They lose their common racial identity, which we have done. They lose their common cultural ambition, which we have done. And even their common value system outside of religion, like logic and reason and Western identity, which we've completely lost. So there's nothing unifying us. And so they go, well, then the way to actually take down the country is to remove this white supremacy. It's like what they're actually trying to do is move apart the foundation of what this country was built on. They don't care about white people. You don't meet racist white people, like genuinely speaking. So they have to invent racism. Well, racism really means when you say you're colorblind. Racism is actually covert.
That's actually, I mean, that was on that chart.
That's what I mean.
It means saying, but we're all just human.
It means that you're Republican, which is like half the country. It's like this is what it means, and what it is, it's the breakdown of society, cultural Marxists, to create division. And I think that's what's interesting about the backwardsness of this fight. I don't see tension between black and white people that are friends, okay? There are actual issues in black neighborhoods. There are issues with crime stats. There are problems in the country. And the problem's definitely not 14-year-old Ryan at his school wearing a MAGA hat. That's not what's contributing to the country's issues. But you know that they don't want to solve the issues. Their intention is to create more division. They've done it through the Immigration Act. They've done it through removing God. They've done it through upending Western, as it said on their Eurocentric curriculum on the Enlightenment. And now that we're all divided and fighting, the last thing they can do is to continue to take the majority population, white people, make them hate themselves. Since we're so done hating each other, we have to start hating ourselves and completely implode the strength or any type of resistance in this country. The last frontier other than whiteness is masculinity, which is also why that's a big attack as well too. Anything that is dominant in the society, they have to tear down. And that's what we're seeing, is just the dismantling of a superpower. Unfortunately, they've been successful. A few of us still live in that superpower, but we're the minority.
Yeah, I will say, I know we got to go to break, but I do want to show really quickly, Eric, to your point, how much is it going to take for people to finally just do something about it? I know you said it's going to take more than yelling at a school board meeting, but let's look at Loudoun County, Virginia. Just yesterday, after the school board meeting was declared an unlawful assembly because a large number of people showed up to protest critical race theory, here are all the parents yelling at this particular school board meeting. Do we have that, guys? Yeah, there it is.
Who pays your salary? Shame on you.
Just real quick, I ended on this note. When you look at that, I'm sorry, it's stupid, because we don't do that for anything else. Any other, whether it be human affair or thing that we, let's say, value, we don't sit there and scream because Albertsons pissed me off. I'm not sitting there at the Albertsons board meeting screaming at them because I didn't like what they sell. You take your business elsewhere. Unfortunately, the way this economic setup is, surrounding public schools does not allow you to do that. So you're screaming at people that are still going to steal your money to line their pockets up and then preach this garbage. And when you drop your kids off for 8 hours a day or however long at those indoctrination camp, there's something jacked up about that. But I think they benefit the most from that, trying to keep that same cycle of bull crap going. They benefit the most because if it was upended, well, they'd be out of jobs.
Where'd they be? All right, we got to take a break. We'll be back. So I know at the time of this taping, Joe Biden is expected to give a speech on gun violence. So we will be likely discussing that tomorrow. I mean, what's the over-under on Biden being able to just coherently give a speech with just no fumbles?
Oh, good luck. On this subject too. Good luck.
Yeah,
that's gonna be impressive.
So we'll have the latest on that tomorrow. But let's get to the Supreme Court, who just today ruled in favor of a former high school cheerleader who argued she could not be punished by her public school. Speaking of public schools, I'm just trying to see how I can get Eric's head to explode anymore before the end of this show. She gave a profanity-laced caption on her Snapchat. Well, this is, of course, while off school grounds, and I believe she showed her middle finger in her picture. For those of you who are not familiar with Snapchat, it's an app where you can send pictures with captions, and the pictures disappear after a certain amount of time. But her school actually punished her and suspended her from her cheerleading activities for this. The Supreme Court ruled that they violated her First Amendment rights because this all took place off of school grounds. What do you think?
That's an interesting story. And obviously, it's only because of the fact that it's a public school that this even goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. People get fired for less than that from their jobs and stuff like that. So this was an interesting ruling nonetheless. But it's hard to envision what is this actually solving? What precedent does this set? Because again, people say jacked up stuff all the time. Is it okay, anybody that says anything jacked up off, let's say not on school grounds or on their private social media or something like that, especially something like Snapchat, which is specifically kind of this social media site designed to being discreet. I don't know. I don't really know what way to take it. I mean, it's impressive that this person was able to, or family or whoever was able to get this Supreme Court to take up such a case as this, that it was a violation of some sort of right that she was suspended. But again, this all goes back to the fact that, okay, this is a
But isn't that extracurricular? And this is kind of an interesting thing with character, which is where, when I said you lose the biospirit of a nation, and what has happened to us is that, you know, I think that when you sign on to extracurriculars, especially as kids, that there's a certain code of conduct or honor that is expected on or off, because you're representing the group, where it's voluntary versus going to school would be considered a requirement, right, by the state. So if the state, to me, was requiring you to do something and then they judge you off campus for what you've done, it doesn't make sense. But if the cheerleading squad had a code of conduct for that and you voluntarily signed up for it, whether it was funded by taxpayers or not, and you're a minor, especially if, is this person a minor?
Yeah, she was 14.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, I thought that was correct. So this is a minor. You go, this just changes in society as well. Like, why is a 14-year-old giving laced Snapchats with their middle finger up? That is a parental issue. And the fact that we're at the point now where the state is having to litigate parenting of a 14-year-old and figuring this out. I mean, how come they could not just figure this out with the parents? And could the parents not just discipline the kid and said, hey, your kid needs to stay home, and be like, yeah, I'm disciplining my kid. They're grounded for a week. Like, that's normally what would happen. You don't need to suspend them. They're not coming to practice for 2 weeks. They're grounded. And it's like the parents aren't doing anything. So now we're looking to the Supreme Court to raise our kids. It's a lose-lose situation. And again, I will just say, there are two empires, there are two worlds. The best thing you can do is take care of your faith, your family, your spirituality, and your physical health, and you can prepare for whatever's next. There's a few options of what might end up happening long term. I can't determine exactly what will happen. I pray to God it's not violence, but you're going to see this is going to continue, like you said, and you're going to front the bill.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't disagree with you, but any win that we can get for freedom of speech right now in 2021, I'm all for. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be back. It's just like, we're just barely hanging on by a thread. The guys were just discussing how grateful they are that MySpace does not exist anymore.
That we appreciate Tom and we miss the free speech.
Tom never did us wrong.
Millions of millennials are happy.
He was always my first friend.
Yeah.
And he's living the life. He's like a photographer now, like a famous photographer.
Really?
He's always taking pictures like on an island or something like that. Dude, he done sold MySpace and he's living his life, man.
That's awesome.
Tom's chilling.
Good for him. Good for you, Tom. Thanks for all the memories. All right. If you have not yet gone to wherever you got your audio podcasts, you got to go. I know you're watching because you like seeing our smiling faces. Well, I don't know. Eric was not very smiley today.
Nah,
Eric
not about public schools.
Eric was
I
mad.
can smile about the public schools.
It's fair. That's fair. But you got to go to wherever you get your audio podcast, subscribe, rate, and review The News and Why It Matters. Not only will it help more people be able to find the show, but we're also tapping into your ego. And we're like, hey, if you write us a good review, you get to see your review read live on air. And who doesn't want that? So you guys go take your little selves over to wherever you get your audio podcast. Make sure to do that. We've got one today from Riverside One Reed, who says, 5 stars, thank you. Listening to your podcast reminds me that I am not crazy. I have never been disappointed in all y'all, which I assume that you come from the South because you just said all y'all. And I would like to just say, you said, reminds me I'm not crazy. I mean, you may be crazy and we just might also be crazy. I don't really know. It may be one or the other. We're not sure. Also, SLH 1948, 5 stars, love this show and all the guests, informative and funny. And Sarah is amazing. That's very nice of you. That's very kind of you. But we appreciate all of the support from all of you. By the way, don't forget Friday, the slightly offensive episode. You're not going to want to miss. I'm nervous.
Grab your carrots and get ready for a cooking lesson.
Don't grab your carrots. Don't do that. I will just say it does. I mean,
grab your carrot by the mini potatoes. That's what the saying goes.
Listen, it was very uncomfortable, but it's a necessary discomfort to figure out and learn what our kids are freaking learning.
That's what they're
That's
teaching the
the
kids.
problem. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Young Ripa 59 if you want more rants on how public school sucks.
Oh yeah, I got to put it over.